Let me start by starting first. I really don't understand what local science is. I could start from there because it means once there's local science, there's also international science. And then the same narrative, Africans are in the local science space. So I think I would want to object to that. But importantly, let me just tell a clear story why we do the things we do. 2007 IPCC Fourth Assessment Report. 97% of the authors in the Africa chapter were from outside of Africa. 3% came from Africa. 90% of the 3% came from South Africa. Then you could see where it was. This is where the science is being done and reported. This is where the narrative is being set. It is that narrative that puts Africa as the most vulnerable, the least able to help itself, and all the risk and hazards and everything you can imagine is slammed on the African continent. And the list just trickles down. What does it do? It leads to what catastrophe? The death, because nobody understands that risk. It's so risky. It's so this. We slam premiums on African projects. The cost of capital goes up. And the spiral just continues and then leads to the debts you're talking about and so on. So we've looked at it at the African Development Bank and said, no, this is not helping. How do we work with local institutions to design our projects? And there are benefits in doing that. That local institutions, they understand this better. You build local capacity. They sustain your projects. If not, we see what has always been done. We've seen so many failed projects on the African continent because people never looked at those local communities. My grandmother doesn't know what adaptation and mitigation are. We make these things up. She understands good agricultural practice. She understands the things they need to do. So sometimes we bring these things and further confuse people. So going back to where I was coming from, that we work with local communities, local institutions to do risk assessments for us. And we understand how these things are. We had a project we had to do in Ghana. We first of all had to do a review of the gender dimensions of infrastructure development in that country. And we found that while they did so well on express roads, on highways, they never considered the footpaths. This is where the women used to go to the hospitals, to go to the markets, to go to everywhere. So you could actually tell that these women were cut off completely from access to hospitals, access to markets, access to schools, because nobody looked at those footpaths to modernize them and so on. So and how did we get to know this? Because we talked with the local people. So this is very important for us as a bank. And so we've decided that all our projects, it must be based on knowledge, on science that we can trust, that we know. That way we will avoid maladaptation. That way we will see that things work well. In conclusion, many years ago I used to work in this city. And we noticed that ICPAC, the IGAD Climate Prediction and Analysis Center, the best on the African continent in terms of regional downscaling. But each time there was the planting season, the local farmers went to the traditional forecasters, and we couldn't understand. I was able to raise resources and brought those traditional forecasters and brought the heavy-duty scientists from ICPAC, put them in one room, told themselves, shut the door. When you come out with a solution, why do these local farmers go to the traditional forecasters? What is it they know that you don't know? It spawned into a multi-million-dollar project eventually because it also increased the usage and the adoption of those scientific indices and scientific data that we had. Why? Because we brought together those traditional forecasters and the scientists, and they came together and strengthened each other. And that's why ICPAC is doing very well today. So I think it is important that MDBs, you're doing development is local. Get into that space and work with the local population. And thank you.